Hello, hello, hello. Jordan Chariton live. Well, not live. We're recording earlier because I need to head into New York City for a pain in the ass doctor's appointment. I digress. Steve Grumbine of Real Progressives joining me on our regular Tuesday. We won't be live, but we have that live energy. And, a little disappointment today in the labor movement, but we're going to lose a lot of battles on the overall war we fight against the United Corporations of America. So we'll start with the Amazon union election, which unfortunately Amazon Labor Union lost at the warehouse in Skodak. So we'll get into why I believe they lost based on having covered it. I was there last week covering a rally. We also have not breaking news, but Democrats continuing to double down on things that by the polls, is not the top priority of voters, and they are not actually running on the economic issues because they've done very little, contrary to what MSNBC tells you. They've done very little economically. And we also have Ron DeSantis's election police are making their first arrests. If you've seen this video in Florida, yeah, I mean, I don't like tossing out the word fascism, but I think this is pretty much fascistic behavior by Ron DeSantis down in Florida. So we'll get to that. Please do me the patriotic duty. Smash the like button. I am wearing my Larry David for president shirt, which, by the way, somebody called me a white supremacist years ago for wearing this shirt. Apparently, supporting Larry David is white supremacist action. Steve, tell people right off the top, what are you up to and where can people find you?
Yeah, podcast, Macro and Cheese. You can find it on all podcast platforms. We release every Saturday morning at 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. This week, we're going to be covering Trussonomics with my guy, Neil Wilson out of the UK. It'd be exciting times. Learn a little bit about UK economics. You can also catch me Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at Real Progress in Action. That is my show, The Rogue Scholar. Please check me out. Please subscribe. Please support our work. I promise you we're doing our best. Hopefully you'll enjoy it. And then, of course, you've got me here at Status Coup, Tuesdays with Jordan. And as often as I can get, it's been crazy here lately, we will get the Grumble back on Sundays at 2 p.m.
Absolutely. I enjoy those grumbles. It makes, occasionally dry economic information very entertaining with your 1970s grunge / porno wigs. And the accent, it's very nice. All right, folks, smash that like button, share the stream. The more people that press like, the more people that will see. So we'll start up in Albany. The Amazon workers held, actually, technically the third election. Staten Island obviously won the historic victory back in April, which Amazon has still not recognized. Then another warehouse across the street in Staten Island had an election a couple months ago. They lost. That was a lot of part-time workers at that warehouse, so a little different. And now this is the third union election. This by at ALB1. The warehouse has about 700 to 800 workers. From what I've gathered, a lot of them are on food stamps. It's in upstate New York, near Albany. The vote didn't go well. Workers voted against unionizing at the Amazon warehouse in Albany. They voted 406 no to 206 yes, so about 2-1. Turnout was 66%. So obviously there was a lot of workers that didn't vote in the election. There's, it's a setback, but I think more so than the result, and we're going to play some of the clips from my reporting, more so than the results, I think we have to understand JFK 8 and the Staten Island workers, not taking anything away from the organizing that was done in upstate New York. I met some of the organizers. They, are good people, and I think they did the best they could. But JFK 8, they had, over a year to do this. They had over a year with, organizing outside the warehouse, barbecues, really a lot of lead time to take on Goliath. And frankly, in that election, yes, Amazon had certainly done union busting. They flew in an army of consultants from out of state, threatened workers, intimidated workers, but the workforce had so much more time to organize, and it worked. It worked. They won. In this case, they got the green light for an election a few weeks ago, and the union busting, from what I was told, not that it was minor in Staten Island, Amazon has stepped it up in terms of union busting. I was told that literally workers in this warehouse felt they were being harassed by these union busting consultants. Union busting consultants. There were more union busting consultants from out of state than actual managers at the warehouse. Their union busting consultants were basically hovering over workers' workstations at times. In one case, we played the audio on Friday. A worker with a disability finally had enough and said, "Please leave me alone." And for that, he was brought into HR, told he was under investigation, and then escorted out of the building. I'm not positive if he was fired or not. We'll play some of that audio in a bit. I was also told by the organizers that their concern was a lot of workers there are worried that Amazon will know how they voted, meaning if they voted yes, there might be retaliation. So I'm not trying to make, total excuses for why they lost. They might have still lost, even if Amazon didn't do these things. But I do not think they would lose 2-1. Basically, Amazon is sending in a Pinkertons-like army of consultants. Amazon, from what I was told, was literally had people going into the union tent wearing vote no shirts, which is against labor law. You're not allowed to go into the voting tent, vote yes or vote no. It's supposed to be neutral. Amazon, during the union election, was putting vote no shirts, other paraphernalia in the break room. I mean, workers were absolutely, received an onslaught of union busting propaganda. And no disrespect, but these are not exactly, highly educated workers who know their labor rights. It could be intimidating when this is a job you depend on. And as I broke on Friday, Amazon was also illegally telling workers that wanted to serve as legal observers that they would have to take unpaid time off or vacation time, which deterred some pro-union people from wanting to serve as legal observers, because if you go into the negative on unpaid time off, you face termination. Legally, the workers were entitled to be legal observers without having to take unpaid time off, without having to take vacation time. But, these are working class, paycheck to paycheck people. So before we get into the audio and remind people, what are your thoughts on, definitely a setback, but I wouldn't say totally shocking.
Well, I don't know all the details of that location, but I do know this. All the news, if you watch the mainstream news, all the news talks about massive layoffs coming, talks about major recession coming, gives you all sorts of things at a high level that makes you make more safe, what you consider to be less risky decisions. So even if they're not educated, they probably catch wind of what's happening, and they're probably in the back of their minds listening to family and friends saying, you better be really grateful for what you have. And I can hear that because I've heard it myself before. And that whole concept is, well, you wanted more than you deserved, and now you get what you got. And that's the kind of mindset, and it's very tough to shake that, believe me. Taking risks in society is usually left for entrepreneurs, and then when they fail, we socialize their losses. But when regular people take a risk, like voting to become part of union, or vote to have a more representation, or do something risky, it's easy to be afraid. I can certainly appreciate that, and it is scary times coming. So it's
Yeah.
not without merit.
Yeah. Let me read Christian Small's statement in response to this. He's obviously the president of Amazon Labor Union. Today, everyone involved with ALU is filled with mixed emotions. We're proud of the brave workers in upstate New York who stood up in the face of a vicious anti-union campaign to challenge a $1 trillion corporation. This won't be the end of ALU at ALB1. We're also feeling both anger and disappointing that the voting process wasn't free and fair. It was a sham election where workers were subjected to intimidation and retaliation on a daily basis. And even the workers who volunteered to be election observers were faced with threats of termination, which is what I was just describing. The suits at Amazon corporate knew that they can't win without putting their thumb on the scale. This is why Amazon and its little army of outside union busters repeatedly violated the nation's labor law. Most of all, we are filled with resolve to continue and expand our campaign for fair treatment for all Amazon workers. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. When workers are empowered to take on a greedy, uncaring company with a poor safety track record and a high churn rate of workers, it isn't a loss, it's an ongoing battle. I haven't talked to Christian, but I could read in between the lines. I think they might be contesting the election on several labor violation grounds. Judging by this National Labor Relations Board, who frankly has been pretty solid, they have overruled Starbucks and its union busting. They have ruled against Amazon. I think it's possible that there will be a redo of this election. To the National Labor Relations Board credit, in Bessemer, Alabama, the first union election where they lost, the union representing the workers down there contested it, and NLRB ruled that Amazon had broke the law, at least labor law, because there are no criminal penalties for these corporate villains, and they had to redo it. They had to redo the election. They still lost, but it's possible that they will have to redo the election because they definitely were illegally trying to intimidate legal observers. From what I was told by multiple sources, they were going inside the tent with vote no paraphernalia. They were threatening workers if they voted yes. So there's quite a few things that ALU could contest this election based on. So we'll see what happens. Obviously, Amazon is now going, and probably its media allies are, including the Washington Post, which is owned by Jeff Bezos. They're going to say, hey, Staten Island was a fluke. The two other locations unanimously voted no, even though the second Staten Island warehouse that voted no was mostly part-time workers. And this one, 66% turnout at all the problems we just went through. But I want to remind people, because I think, I don't know if the other locations will be watching this, but unlike progressives who don't seem to learn lessons from their failed campaigns, I hope other workers at other Amazons learn lessons from this, lessons that, hopefully Status Coup is teaching through our reporting. Colin, let's remind people, on Friday, we obtained audio showing just the battle that the union organizer was having to deal with HR, because HR was illegally giving legal observers the wrong information. Let's play part of that clip.
Told her that as an observer that she would have to use UPT or vacation, and that's absolutely not true.
That was the directive I got.
Who gave you that information? Yes. Who gave you that information?
That was given to me by Jess this morning.
Okay, so that is absolutely not true. And the fact that you guys are not giving our observers the proper information is extremely concerning. So we need to clarify this so that we can in turn provide them with the right information. And is there any reason that you guys are not educated on the law and what provisions the observers have?
I will find out. I asked the question and I relayed the information. So I will go back and re-clarify.
Okay.
And I'll let you know.
Okay, how long will that take?
I'm going to do it right now.
Perfect.
10 minutes later, Jude returned with the following information.
Hey Jude, I have a question. How come you guys aren't telling everybody that when the voting booth is open, they have the full 4 hours?
What's that?
When the voting booth is open, they have a full 4 hours. How come they don't know that?
They should. They know they can leave at any time.
So Every associate in this building knows that they have the full 4 hours?
They know they could go out and vote at any time.
No, do they know that they have the full 4
Let's talk
hours?
about one issue
Okay,
at a time.
all right, because you guys aren't really
So,
giving, go ahead.
The issue that you were asking me about, they
Yeah.
re-verified it.
Yep.
And they said that that is actually
It is
the rule.
absolutely not the law.
I'm not gonna argue.
So wait, you're
I'm not
telling
gonna-
me
okay.
that your vote, let me get this straight, Jude, because I know the law, okay? Our observers have the right to take the full 4 hours, right? You don't have to pay them,
I'm not agreeing
but
with
they
anything.
do
I'm
not
just
have
relaying
to,
the
they
information
were,
that was told to me.
what was told
And
to
the
you?
information that was told to me is that if someone is volunteering to observe for the ALU, they are doing that on their own time.
No, they're not, Jude. They get the full 4 hours.
Cannot clarify anything farther than what I have been told.
Who told you that?
Amazon was basically sabotaging the election. And by the way, legal observers are important because I certainly would not put it past Amazon to toss ballots if they could, or do other really nefarious things. I also want to show that they essentially threatened a worker with a disability who was pro-union and escorted him into HR and told him he was under investigation because he, for the crime of telling one of these union busting consultants, hey, leave me alone. Because I'm telling you, they were literally hovering over workers in the final weeks of this campaign. Let's play part of that.
Is Richard still in the office?
Yes.
Okay, so you have Richard Rivera and Greg, another HR,
Yes.
and who else?
Well, Greg just went to grab something.
Okay, so it's just you and Richard?
Yes.
Okay, so it's you and Richard.
Gonna let you until Greg is done. Okay.
Okay, and I just want to confirm that it's you, Richard Rivera of Loss Prevention, and
Yeah, just me now because they walked up.
okay.
So, like you discussed, right, to us, you're asking for an accommodation towards the conversation right now, right? In writing?
Say that again?
You're asking for an accommodation, right, within the conversation to be able to have it in writing.
Wait a minute. I'm sorry. Allow me to interject. Richard, I want to clarify. He's not asking for an accommodation. He's simply asking that if you're calling him into a meeting and investigating him, making an allegation, all he's simply saying is that he would like something in writing because he's identified as a person with disability. And as a person with disability and under extreme emotional duress right now, he's just simply asking for something in writing. That's all.
So, like I said, Project cannot provide you that. Now, if you would like to go through the accommodations process and be able to go through that, by all means, of course I can't. Now, if this is too, impactful as you're discussing.
Hold on, Heather. Hold
Okay.
on. The reason why this happened is because I'm upset. I am a person with disability, let's just first say that. I'm not crutching myself by saying that, but I am a person with disability. Okay. Second, I have asked my managers, my red vest managers, Jess, not only just Jess, but the bald-headed one, I forgot his name, and others. I didn't mean to say bald-headed, I just don't know his name. And I asked them to please, because my job's on the line with this vote. My job is on the line, I feel, with this vote. And you can write that down, too.
The point of airing that, just to give you, remind you, this worker, I don't know what the disability is, something cognitively. He told one of the army of union busting consultants, which they're paying millions of dollars, by the way, to come into these warehouses. He told them, please leave me alone, because they're literally hovering over the workers. And at times pulling workers aside. Workers need to meet their insane quota as Amazon workers, pulling them aside to give them little lectures on why they should vote no and why If they vote yes and the union passes, they might have to cut hours, benefits, lay people off, et cetera, et cetera. So classic propaganda. When he basically, kind of yelled at this person, this man with a disability gets pulled into HR without a union rep, by the way, and or a fellow worker to witness it, and is escorted out of the building. I don't even know if he got his job back, but you heard that final line, I feel like my job is on the line. That is a sentiment I was told by multiple workers that a lot of workers felt if they voted yes, there would be retaliation. I don't know if that made up the difference in how many no votes, but listen, when you have people, like you said, Steve, there's inflation. I don't know if they're watching the news to know about the recession coming, but they're certainly feeling a recession right now with high prices, et cetera. Holiday season's coming up. Many of them work other jobs besides Amazon. If you instill fear in them that bad things are going to happen if this union passes, you could get a lot of votes. I don't mean they're uneducated in terms of not smart people. They're uneducated in terms they don't know their labor rights, and most people don't. So I think future Amazon campaigns really need to see Amazon's union busting. It's only good. They're only going to step it up. They have limited resources for these union busting consultants. They don't care about whether what they're doing is legal because there is no criminal consequences. Just like for the fossil fuckers who poison your water, the air, lie about it. None of them are going to go to jail. If anything, they're going to pay a fine, which is just baked into their balance sheet every year. So just
Loss
like
prevention.
Loss prevention. So future organizers, it's already David versus Goliath, but you're going to have to get smarter and also better digital media strategies to deal with this union busting. I think one of the things JFK8 did so well was TikTok and Twitter and getting the union busting out there constantly, putting Amazon on blast, which galvanized the workers, which got Bernie Sanders involved, eventually shamed AOC into getting involved after the fact, by the way. But I think other campaigns are going to have to say, listen, we have automatically, once we organize, we're going to have to expect them sending an army of union busting consultants in. And we're going to have to be able to talk to those fearful workers and explain to them why legally they can't retaliate against you. If they do retaliate against you, we will file against them. Point to the Starbucks cases in Memphis where Starbucks laid off 7 union workers, pro-union workers, and they were reinstated because that's illegal. So, live to fight another day. Amazon warehouse in San Bernardino, California, already filed for a union election, and other Amazons in Kentucky, North Carolina, and I think one other place are currently are organizing to get a union election. So there will be more defeats, there will be more victories, but we're going to have more victories if workers and particularly the organizers see what was done here and respond accordingly.
No, I couldn't agree more. I mean, I'm a little baffled by the lack of celebrity presence. I mean, Christian Smalls has got opportunity there. I don't know to what degree he did or didn't try to get people there, but to me, it seems weird that the headline labor activists weren't there for a vote like that. I know Amazon is only one of many businesses out there, but it's a very important one right now at a very nascent time in a reemergence of unionism. And I would think that they would be all hands on deck for this kind of thing. So, for those people above that are in the AFL-CIO and other groups that are kind of like the union of unions, do better, guys. Get out there, help them, really give them air cover.
Well, I got to say, let's just call names here. I'm not baffled, but we should call out the left on YouTube. I don't know any other bigger thing going on right now in the progressive movement. Certainly not electorally. The midterms, are happening, but there's no capital P progressive candidate for Congress or Senate. And frankly, we've seen the limitations when it comes to electoral politics. So I've been saying all along, we've been talking about it. Right now, the action is with union organizing, worker strikes, tenants unions. I went up to cover this in Albany. As far as I know, I was the only national media reporter there. Other than Breaking Points, which featured some of our work, I don't know of any other lefty YouTube channels that were even talking about the fact that there's another Amazon union election coming up. I don't know any other channel that had interviewed workers. You don't have to go there to interview the workers. So if you don't even have a left infrastructure, it's not enough to come in and cover it after they win, which is what happened last time. Remember, Status Coup was the only ones covering it at the JFK warehouse. I don't say that to toot my horn, but that's the truth. Thanks to you, the Status Coup viewer who funds this. So, would have been nice if Jimmy Dore covered this, right? That would have gotten it some attention. He's covering other things these days. I'll leave it at that. Would have been nice, if, well, I guess the Hill was kind of right wing, but everybody, Kyle, Mike from the Humanist Report, David Dole. I mean, I'm not calling people out, but calling people out, like, do better. This is not the sexy topic. It's not going to go viral. You won't get a lot of views, but you're gonna. Hopefully, the more awareness, the more people that cover it, that then gets on social media. Then the organizers there could push out these clips, including to the workers in the warehouse. They're all on Twitter. They're all on TikTok. So it all manifests on each other. And at the end of the day, they lost by 200 votes. That's a lot, but also a little if certain things broke a different way, more celebrity presence, et cetera, et cetera. So, we'll follow it. This will not be the last Amazon union election. And by the way, the fact that, for 20 years, there was never a union election at Amazon. So it's not a small thing, that they won in Staten Island, but they even got greenlit for 2 other elections this year. So it's not all bad. The fact that they won an election, they got an approval to hold 2 other elections, which means they showed enough interest among the workers there to be to have a union election. So we will have more victories, but make no mistake, independent media, corporate media is not going to cover it. They'll cover it if they win, or they'll definitely cover it if they lose, because that's what they want. But they're not going to cover it beforehand. So we need all hands on deck. Interview these workers. If you can cover these things on the ground, obviously it's up in Albany and not everyone can get there, but very, very important. Moving on, Steve, and please smash that like button, folks. We might not be live, but we're live in spirit. So Joe Biden, the president, gave a little speech today. It seems that they're looking at polls and doing the opposite of what the polls say. It should go without saying, but we'll say it. Steve and I are 2 white men. So I am not, and I know Steve is not minimizing that Roe v. Wade is very important. I'm not trying to say it shouldn't be a top issue in the election. I know you have daughters. I don't have children yet, but I have a niece, and I care very much about it. So I'm not talking about in terms of politics that Democrats shouldn't be focused on it, but in terms of the polls and in terms of what actually might galvanize everybody to come out, abortion, according to the polls, is not doing that. The top issue, shocker, is the economy and inflation, but Democrats are continuing to double down on focusing on abortion. And again, I do think it's an important issue, but you got to walk and chew gum at the same time. The problem is, contrary to what MSNBC and the resistance crowd says, economically, the Democrats have provided a lot of crumbs. Some older, maybe more comfortable people will argue, well, it's better than the Republicans, but that ain't going to do it anymore. When you're facing nearly $4 a gallon in gas, you can't afford groceries, your electricity bill is through the roof, rent, all the things you and I talk about, Steve. Let's play Biden talking about what they'll do if Democrats keep the House and Senate.
The court got Roe right nearly 50 years ago, and I believe Congress should codify Roe once and for all. Right now, we're short a handful of votes. If you care about the right to choose, then you got to vote. That's why in these midterm elections are so critical to elect more Democratic senators to the United States Senate and more Democrats to keep control of the House of Representatives. And folks, if we do that, Here's the promise I make to you and the American people. The first bill that I will send to the Congress will be to codify Roe v. Wade. And when Congress passes it, I'll sign it in January, 50 years after Roe was first decided the law of the land.
So the obvious thought, Steve, why would people believe you when you didn't publicly go on a crusade against Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema to end the filibuster or waive the filibuster for this very important issue? Why would people believe them? And by, Nancy Pelosi went on MSNBC and got mad because she was questioned about this and said, well, do you have the 10 Republican votes to do this? No, but you could have, after an unprecedented Supreme Court decision, vilified the two senators who they'll waive the filibuster for the debt ceiling, but not for reproductive rights. So we didn't do that. So I don't know, call me cynical, but if you get two extra Democratic senators, should we just take Biden at his word that they'll have the 51 votes to waive the filibuster? He told me $15 minimum wage. He told us a public option. Your thoughts?
My thoughts are that Democrats have known since Obama that Roe v. Wade was in danger. They have known for a long time that Roe v. Wade was in danger. They didn't do anything then. In fact, Obama went out of his way to say it wasn't all that big of a deal to him. Okay, back when he was in power. That's 10 years ago. So here we are now. We've got Joe Biden, who takes on power with a supermajority, folks. Whether or not Sinema and Manchin are the evil twins, activate superpowers or whatever, the fact is that Democrats, because you remember, just vote blue. Just vote blue. Well, Manchin and Sinema are blue. And just voting blue got you the repeal of one of the most important bills that are decisions in U.S. Supreme Court history. And now we are dealing with the fallout of that. And it's a very important subject where no matter where you stand on the issue, because it has far-reaching consequences. But the economy plays heavily into a woman's choices that she makes in terms of keeping or getting rid of, terminating a pregnancy. I mean, there's so much going on here that the Democrats just fail to realize. And I don't think, here's the thing. I'm just going to say it, and people can disagree with me. I don't believe the Democrats really believe any of this. I believe it's all a matter of what helps them in the polls. They could have done it back then, but Jordan, the shelf life on this would have terminated before the elections. They needed to keep this going hot and bothered so that they could have this as a wedge issue during the election. This is nothing to do with they couldn't have done it. They have a supermajority, folks. They have a supermajority. The Democratic Party has ways of making people do what it wants them to do.
Well, they had one. They don't have a supermajority now, but they had one. Yes.
Fair enough. That's the point, though, is that they did, and they did nothing with it. Okay. Right. The fact of the matter is that the Democrats have also continually faked left, gone right every single time, not just during election season, not just during the general, but literally once the bullets start flying, they are literally right in that space of pro-business, pro-Wall Street. And so all these things that the people want suddenly become election issues when there is no energy behind, when there is no, and this is why the polls show exactly it. We're sick of it. Many people have been sick of it for a lot longer than now. Okay. But now I think people are really genuinely getting sick of it. It's like Lucy pulling the football away from Charlie Brown. They know full well that these guys are nothing more than neoliberal shills for Wall Street in the end of the day. They know that Joe Biden is orchestrating all kinds. Is that the phone?
Sorry.
Anyway, I thought that was another sound effect for Grumbine.
No.
Anyway, they know full well, though, that these issues don't play well. And just watching the other day, there was a town hall where AOC was accosted by folks asking her about why she's funding, voting to fund Ukrainian Nazis. And the fact of the matter is she had nothing to say. She just sat there, I'm sorry, I don't know what to say. Things are tough. But this is what people see. This is what people see. And it's not good. And so it's like, you're thinking of an ideal. The ideal is what you think a Democrat would be, but the reality and the ideal, they don't measure up. And this is what you're seeing. And I wouldn't trust them at all.
I want to stay on this topic, but just a quick detour on that, because I haven't talked about this. I'm not defending AOC because I think her foreign policy record sucks. And as far as I know, she's voted for defense budget increases. But it's very strange to me, Steve. I don't know if you noticed this, that all these anti-war people, they seem to ignore the country that invaded the other country. I mean, we could talk about Nazis in the Azov battalion till we're blue in the face, but they almost make it seem, and I'm talking about Jimmy, Max Blue, all these people and, their followers. It's all of the focus is on like, well, America should, force Ukraine to negotiate and America should stop sending weapons. Well, Russia invaded Ukraine. We could argue about, well, was Russia facing threats? Yeah, Russia was lied to, et cetera, et cetera. We've talked about this before when it comes to NATO. But Russia did invade Ukraine, and it just seems odd to me, like these protesters, like you think AOC is the difference between nuclear war or not? I mean, it just seemed to me, yeah, you could criticize AOC, the squad, because they're not really that left on foreign policy, but like, don't forget that like Russia could end the war. Russia could be coming to the diplomatic negotiation table. They're not going to. That doesn't mean I've been saying for months, I don't think we should be sending any more weapons to Ukraine. I care for what's happening with the Ukrainian people, humanitarian aid maybe, but the weapons are just continuing the war. But I have a problem with people who just, it seems through their arguments, it totally gives Russia a pass in my view.
Let's look at this. Pretend like Mexico, okay, suddenly received weapons and put them right on the border of the U.S. and Mexico, right? And suddenly our enemies, our trade enemies, whatever, suddenly set up shop right there at the border around the world, similar to like Cuba or something else like that has happened in the past. And what would we do? What would the United States do if our neighbors did that to us? And I can tell you what we do. We go to war. We'd be at war yesterday. So back when Barack Obama was in office, he said pointedly, if we fuck with them, if we put stuff on Russia's doorstep through Ukraine, if we mess around with Ukraine, we're creating war. We're creating war. He said that right then. Okay. So what happens? The United States, through its allies, through NATO, and this is not like the people that you mentioned, I don't even pay attention to half the time because of they've gone off the rails in many ways. So I'm not even focused on that. I'm looking at people who I really trust, who aren't off, consuming quantities of ivermectin and stuff like that, that are literally sitting there and focused on the geopolitics and the economics and the IMF and so forth. And people that I care about that are not off the edge are sitting there saying, Steve, he goes, this is a very serious situation. To ask Russia to step away in this case is to ask Russia to basically leave itself wide open for U.S. predation. And the U.S., ever since Hillary Clinton lost the election, has been hell-bent on redeeming Hillary through demonizing Russia, even before they invaded Ukraine. They've been busy demonizing China because China's kicking our ass economically, and they're busy pointing at them because they're making up the new evil axis, the evil empire, okay, of Iran and China and Russia, and then it's growing. And so it's kind of like, from an economics perspective, which is where I usually focus, we've noticed the consolidation of the non-white, non-European global north, the capitalists, the neoliberals, uniting to create markets, seeing Ukraine as an opportunity for a market, and simultaneously doing everything it can to make that happen. And I blame the U.S., quite frankly, because the U.S. knows exactly what it's doing.
Yeah, no, I think we agree on most of that. My point is, I don't think that's actually why Vladimir Putin invaded Ukraine. And judging by his own words, when he invaded Ukraine, first he said, we're doing it to denazify Ukraine, right? And then he gave a speech, which I watched some of, and it was translated. Basically sounded like Trump a little bit, and talking about the grand visions of reclaiming the old Soviet empire. I do think that Russia definitely they got missiles pointed every which way. My point is, when people now, their only focus is like on the Azov battalion and we're funding Nazis. I got news for you. There's Nazis in Russia's army.
There's
Nazis
right here
in our army. And this whole notion, this whole notion that these people are so offended by Nazis. Well, half of them do tweets saying Marjorie Taylor Greene is out-lefting the left when Marjorie Taylor Greene is palling around with neo-Nazis. So my whole point is, it's more nuanced than just be all against Ukraine or all for Russia or reverse. And Russia plays a role here too. They invaded. You could say, some might say, well, what choice did they have? I don't agree with that. I do think they had a choice. Based on Putin's own words, he did not invade because of the threat of NATO.
There's no good guys here. There's no good guys here. But
that's my problem. When the people forget AOC, I don't care. But when you have protesters only focusing on the U.S.'s role here and forgetting who invaded who, that's my problem.
Well, I appreciate what you're saying. I'm just going to tell you point blank. The U.S. hegemony has created more problems in the world than any other thing in the world, period, bar none. And as a result of that, I think you see people realize that the end of U.S. dominance over groups is something to be celebrated, quite frankly. And so when they see Russia give the finger to the U.S. as the U.S. tries to expand NATO to its front door, I think people have a natural tendency to say, yeah, fuck you, U.S.
Right.
I know that that's not popular with the stars and bars and the red, white, and blue, and these colors don't run and stuff like that. But as far as I'm concerned, my bigger issue here is the advancement of neoliberal capitalism and the IMF's role of structural adjustments. Like, I have a very detailed analysis, but mine doesn't go into the Azov battalion and the Nazis.
That sounds like a really good topic for a Sunday. Let's get ready to grumble.
You know, interestingly enough, I'm not going to tip my hand, but I am looking at some options there. It may not be this week, but it'll be soon. You know, in particular, though, I think it's really important because if you look at me, the way I'm looking at this, Ukraine has massive resources, and they have very, very remedial or, you know, archaic production. They are not an advanced industrial power. So when you look at that, there's a lot of stuff that's sort of just trapped in the ground. It's same with Russia. Russia isn't fully advanced either in a lot of ways. And so with that in mind, you think to yourself, what is the U.S. doing? The U.S. is treating Ukraine like an extension of the global South. They're treating them like a colonial nation. They're rolling out the red carpet. Come join us in the EU. Come join us. We'll give you IMF loans. We'll restructure your society. We'll make you a good market for us. And that, I don't care about the Russia stuff at all. I really don't, because at the end of the day, this is what the U.S. interest is in this case. They want that resource, and they're trying to cordon off Russia and China. They're trying to literally isolate them, and it's going to bite them in the ass is what it's going to do, because at the end of the day, China is going to out-resource us. They're going to out-produce us, and they have enough of a straight line instead of all this bullshit political crap. They have enough straight line to the finish line that they're going to do laps around us. Russia has a strong ally in China.
Right.
And if you remember when Joe Biden did his State of the Union, not too terribly, I don't know, it was last year's, but he demonized China the entire time, made a big show of China has literally created their One Belt, One Road initiative. They are a true economic superpower, right? And they got the engine to do the things that we could only dream to do. We have allowed ours to literally fall apart, while we have literally sent our military around the world trying to make sure that their markets are ours. Now, all of a sudden, because of COVID and because of the breakdown in supply chains, suddenly the United States is saying, hey, maybe we've got to go ahead and build back here at home. Ro Khanna was just out there pushing the stuff the other day, talking about, hey, great way to stop inflation. Let's bring production back to the United States and blah, blah, blah. There may be some truth in that, but the fact is that we fucked ourselves. We literally allowed the entire nation to fall apart, farming out everything. Now, if you look at me purely economically, I'm going to tell you that imports are a net benefit and exports are a cost because we're sending real goods and services out. But that's what's going on with Ukraine right now. And so Russia sees them as their actual resource. It's a battle of resources once again. I don't know if it's money, it's resources. It's the stuff.
The last thing I'll say on this, because I took a detour on this topic, in your scenario, if missiles were pointed at us from Mexico, I would still be against us slaughtering innocent Mexican people. I know that's war, but that's my point. I mean, at the end of the day, there's God knows how many innocent people being slaughtered in Ukraine. Yeah, it is a proxy war. Obviously, the United States wants to remove Putin. They want regime change. But my point is, people should not forget, even though Russia does have real threats against them, they also invaded Ukraine. And what we're seeing is the loss of innocent lives. But getting back, weird segue back to the original topic. After, and just to show you the polls, Colin, if we could show, it's listed, it's the third image on the sheet. But look at this New York Times Siena College poll on just top issues for people. I mean, you have, let me click on it. Hold on. You have the economy, including jobs and the stock market, among likely voters, top issue at 26%. Females, 21%. They care more about, 21% of females care more about the economy, including jobs, the stock market. 15% of females care more about inflation and the cost of living compared to 5%. 9% of females who care about abortion. Again, not to say abortion, the horrible Supreme Court decision doesn't matter, but as always, bread and table issues matter the most to most people. That goes for Democrats, Republicans, men, women, white, black, Hispanic, it doesn't matter. I'm not a James Carville fan, but he was right. It's the economy, stupid. So
yes, it is.
The economy is the top issue. Abortion ranks third. All the way down there, look at the state of democracy, 8%. And this is what a lot of the Democratic messaging is about. You and I have talked about the rising levels of authoritarianism, fascism. It's an issue. So is abortion. But if you don't have an actual economic message, because the policies you have pushed are essentially crumbs. Let's face it. $1,400 check during an unprecedented pandemic, right? Abandon a $15 minimum wage, citing a bullshit parliamentarian who's not an actual elected official and whose position they could have disregarded. They could have put through a $15 minimum wage in the original Biden's COVID package, which, by the way, at this point is the conservative position. But you know what? It certainly would have helped with inflation to have the $15 minimum wage. They would have had to get rid of the staggering and moved it very quickly to actually a $15 minimum wage. You go down the list, the bipartisan inflation deal. Is anybody waking up thanking God for that? No. Bipartisan.
Trash.
It's a privatization scheme. They're selling off.
Trash.
They're selling off public wastewater water systems to private corporations. The Inflation Reduction Act would have been great 15 years ago in terms of the renewable tax incentives. It's not going to stop the planetary inferno. You know something that Biden and the Democrats would be doing a lot better on, Steve, in terms of the economy? If Biden would have went on a public crusade against Joe Manchin to permanently extend the child tax credit. If he would have done that, I think he would have won, because there is power in the presidential bully pulpit. And that's something you could actually run on economically, that we are giving X amount of money per month to American families. We helped alleviate child poverty by X amount. That's something real. Is it my preferred policy or yours? No. But it's better than nothing. But he didn't do that. Why? Because his donors don't want that kind of social spending.
It was just in the freaking New York Times. I know it's a bunch of bullshit paper, but it was just in the New York Times. And they were talking about how Democrats save the economy by spending $2 trillion into the economy. And then they say, but they don't want to talk about it. Why do you think they don't want to talk about it? Because of inflation, because they still haven't destroyed the lie that printing money creates inflation. And because they never took the time to do that, and most vote blue, no matter whose, don't know how to defend shit from Shinola anyway. The Republicans have run train on the Democratic Party as a result of their own fecklessness. This is simply a lack of education, but it's a lack of education that the people at the top have access to people that know and refuse to listen to. So, I mean, Democrats have built their own tomb, and now they're getting ready to seal themselves in it by being idiots and feckless.
But am I wrong? And again, this is not you and me, rah for the Democrats, but just politically, if Biden would have pushed Manchin on the child tax credit, he probably would have gotten it extended, because if the full weight of the president and the media who would be covering it was behind Manchin, dare I say, Biden went to West Virginia and really went on Manchin's doorstep. I think you could have gotten an extension of that child tax credit. I think that could significantly make a difference in terms of the voters who right now think Republicans will do better on the economy. What are Republicans proposing? As soon as they get in,
burn.
You're literally talking about extending Trump's tax cuts for the wealthy. So when you don't actually fight for people because your donors don't want you to, because you're more interested in fundraising for the midterms and you need your donors to give you that money, this is what happens. And by the way, you look even closer at that poll, Steve. Colin, let's show the first image. The first image, this is, I know it's a very long way, but in the 2024 presidential primaries and caucuses, do you think you will vote in the Republican primary or the Democratic primary? Look over there at what I highlighted. 45% of college educated, meaning with a college degree. They are 45% of white college educated, which is usually the Democratic Party's strong point. 45% say they'll be voting in the Republican primary. 42% of white college educated say they'll be voting in the Democratic primary. So right now, looking ahead to 2024, the Republicans, it's one poll, but it's the New York Times. It's a pretty good poll. More white college educated people say they want to vote in the Republican primary than the Democratic primary. And non-college educated, the Democrats are getting absolutely clobbered. 59% say they would vote in the Republican primary. 22% of college educated would vote in the Democratic primary. So that's what they say, those white working class voters. And to be clear, there are black working class voters too, but these polls are looking specifically at white working class voters. The Democrats, they've already repelled a lot of the white working class over the last 30 years, but now they're starting to lose ground on the, let's just say, suburban educated folk who are gravitating more towards Republicans. Why is that? Because contrary to the MSNBC spin, contrary to the Democratic Party spin, they're not structurally providing any bold economic policy. Your thoughts?
My thoughts are that right now, inflation is all I hear about from anyone that I talk to, period. I don't hear anything about anything. Ukraine and Russia and inflation. That's it. And every single one of them calls it Biden's inflation, which is, first of all, it's ridiculous, even though I hate Biden. Folks, I hate Joe Biden, okay? It's not his inflation, all right? But that's the number one issue. And because people, regardless of what party you're in, believe that when the government spends money, it creates inflation, this is the number one freaking gorilla on the back of the Democratic Party, that because they won't answer that question, those people that you called out, they're all looking at inflation. They're saying, well, shit, if this is what the Democrats do, I don't care what fascism looks like. Give it to me, because this freaking losers bullshit that the Democrats are putting forward is so pathetic, so wretched, so awful that I'm willing to stomach these grotesque scumbag racist proto-fascists. I mean, that's literally, I mean, people are just over the inflation. And the problem is that Joe Biden is not willing to address the inflation either. He's not willing to even talk about it. The inflation is brought on by several things. And because they won't do that, because they won't. It's left everybody, especially those uneducated voters, those uneducated white voters that they're losing in droves, the blue collar folks, they're all walking away because all they see is that Biden and the gang are like, things are getting better, Slick, hop in, let's go get ourselves an ice cream cone. While suddenly they're looking at their grocery bill and they're going, oh my God, I can't afford my electric bill. Oh my God, I'm going to miss my mortgage payment. Oh my God, my whole life is going to hell in a handbasket. But there's the Democrats stepping over homeless people as they talk about how much they care about homeless people. It's just ridiculous. And it's because of that boutique bourgeois liberal, the limousine liberal that we've all known and hated forever. Even liberals have hated forever. Progressives have hated forever. Whatever have hated forever. Those very people it's their sensibilities Democrats are placating. It's the boutique bourgeois liberal, and people are rejecting it left, right, and center, and they have nowhere else to go. They have nowhere else to go.
Speaking of the boutique bourgeoisie liberal, this is a tweet from Jen Psaki. She was Biden's press secretary, who predictably moved over to MSNBC. I don't know if she's an anchor or just a guest now, but she's paid a lot of money by MSNBC. She tweeted, "Holy moly, Siena New York Times poll, more than a third of independent voters and a smaller but noteworthy contingent of Democrats said they were open to supporting candidates who reject the legitimacy of the 2020 election as they focus on economic issues." Colin, please keep that up because I want to dissect this. First of all, this is not like a show. She genuinely is surprised by this.
Yes.
So this shows you that in large part, and this, by the way, is not only applies to the Democratic Party, Republican Party are all elitist millionaires and out of touch too. But she genuinely, because they live in their bubble where like the most important thing right now is democracy is at stake. And you can have that privilege. You can have that privileged position. You could have the luxury of only worrying about that if you're doing well. If you live in DC, if you're a politician or a cable news star or, part of the kind of punditariat, I like to call it. And by the way, I'm not minimizing it. I don't even think we have a democracy. I've made that clear. But the idea of what a democracy is supposed to be, the idea of a democracy is in grave threat right now. I mean, you have election deniers running roughshod all over the country. One might very well become governor of Arizona. Carrie Lake refused to, she said, I'll accept the results if I win. And, just so happens Tulsi Gabbard is now campaigning for her. Boy, did Tulsi, that's another story. She is not slowing down whatsoever. Why I left the left. Now I'm going to campaign for election deniers. She's also campaigning for some guy in New Hampshire who wants to put boots on the ground in Ukraine. So, anti-war Tulsi. But my point is, these people, the Jen Psakis of the world, the MSNBC crowd, CNN pundits, and even their journalists, they genuinely don't understand because they have no connection to working people. They don't go out like we do. Our last reporting tour, the Economic Hunger Games tour we took through Pennsylvania, Ohio, and West Virginia. They don't have a clue what's really happening. They genuinely believe, as they report, that the economy is doing good, that this is a historic recovery. And they think saving democracy is the number one issue. Listen, I do think, like we've said, I think Roe v. Wade is very important. I think democracy is very important. Free and fair elections is very important. But those are important on the macro level. On the micro level, people need to know that they could afford their rent this month. People need to know that they're going to have enough food for their kids, that they're not going to have to be making tough choices. And right now they don't have that comfort. And if the party in power, no matter how shitty the Republicans are, if the party in power is not proposing anything or they haven't delivered anything, what you see is what you get. We talked about it, Steve. You know what would have been very popular? And he could have done it. Biden months ago could have said, all right, ExxonMobil, all right, name your fossil fuel company. By the numbers, this is not just you passing off increased costs, you're price gouging. I'll give you till the end of the week to lower gas prices by $1, or we're going to pull your federal subsidies of $15 billion a year. Dare me. I dare you. Easy. And you know what? I actually think the oil companies would have folded. But Biden wouldn't do it because it's not just direct donations from oil companies. Actually, Republicans get more direct donations from oil companies. Wall Street is heavily invested in the fossil fuels industry, and Wall Street is heavily invested in Joe Biden and the Democratic Party. They're not going to do anything to really go at the fossil fuel industry. That's why the most you got from Biden was a harshly toned letter to the fossil fuel executives.
Yeah. This is the deal, Jordan. I mean, I know this word probably drives folks crazy at this point, but it's got to stick. Neoliberalism is about just completely letting go, laissez-faire capitalism, completely unregulating, completely hands-off. And the government, this Biden presidency, as well as a Trump presidency, et cetera, they all literally have the ideological belief that business should be free to do what it wants, to clear markets, and that's the greatest expression of freedom. And so this is their angle. And so anytime you're going to see something, instead of it being actual meaningful legislation, it's going to be a sternly worded letter, a sternly worded correspondence dinner. It's going to be a sternly worded press conference, but it's not going to be meaningful antitrust, anti-monopoly, legislation. It's not going to be a push to break up the big oil companies. It's not going to be a push to break up the big pharmaceutical companies. It's not going to be a push to break up any of these groups. It's going to be 100% about maintaining hegemony and allowing monopolies to exist and to continue to flourish without anything. And we've got, once these monopolies grow to the point where they're almost quote unquote too big to fail. And so they will literally fall over themselves protecting them at the expense of us, all in the name of protecting us from them failing. And it's over and over and over again. They're not going to do it. They're not going to touch it. It's going to be sternly worded bullshit. And believe me, my brother said this to me last night. My brother is a lost cause in so many ways. I love him to death. Lost cause. Brian sat there and said to me point blank, he says, you know something? Trump would have told them, fuck you, do this, or I'm going to do that. And he would have done it. And he goes, that's why I support Trump. And I'm like, Trump's a piece of shit. But you know what, though? I understand what he's saying. I'm not agreeing with him.
I don't think he actually would have done it, but he would have
He would have been more forceful in making, he'd be like, hey, you ain't raising this shit on my watch, mother effer. And that's the business side. That's the whole bravado. That's the Shark Tank Trumpy right there, okay? Like him or hate him, that's what my brother, who was a born-again Trumper, said point blank to me. And and I sat there and I said, I hate when you make me try to defend Joe Biden, because there's no defense of Joe Biden. I'm a lefty. Joe Biden isn't my tribe. And so I talked to him like that, and he's like, dude, well, I don't know. Who's your president of the left? There is no left. Oh. So this is conversations in America. This is the kind of table talk that you get. Brothers talking to one another. And he's sitting there saying, Biden's a freaking feckless, limp-wristed fool. And I mean, his basic quotes, guy's worthless.
Right.
I'm like,
but
what do you do with that?
I think the reality is, and Obama, actually, let's play that clip, Colin. Obama basically said, a lot of Democrats, they're trying to push that the problem is actually the wokeness, not the lack of actual economic delivery for the people. Let's play Obama.
I think we do get into trouble. Look, I used to get into trouble whenever, as you know, you guys know well, whenever I got a little too professorial and started when I was behind a podium as opposed to when I was in a crowd. There were times where I'd get sound like I was giving a bunch of policy gobbledygook, and that's not how people think about these issues. They think about them in terms of the life I'm leading day to day. How does politics how is it even relevant to the things that I care most deeply about? My family, my kids, work that gives me satisfaction, having fun, not being a buzzkill, right?
That's a lesson for the Democratic
Party. Yeah, and sometimes Democrats are, right? It's like, sometimes, people just want to not feel as if they are walking on eggshells. and they want some acknowledgement that life is messy and that all of us at any given moment can, say things the wrong way, make mistakes.
So he's actually has it right, but for the wrong reasons. People don't want to walk on eggshells economically. People don't want to walk on eggshells, meaning they don't want to fear that they're not going to have enough money to pay the rent this month. They don't want to fear that they're going to have to move. They don't want to fear that they're not going to be able to provide for their children. They don't want to fear that they're going to be on the streets. You could talk about woke and, that kind of stuff. But to me, that's more like a narrative that's being pushed, that this is why Democrats are losing. People put up with things that they find irritating if the main thing that matters to them or the main needs that matter to them are being met. I mean, look at it. You have even independent voters who are willing to vote for election deniers because they're focused on the economy. So I don't really think this narrative that a lot of, frankly, resistance, MSNBC type people, no, people don't like Democrats, not because of our policies, but because we're too woke or, we're a buzzkill. That's not why people vote or don't vote. That might be a cultural concern for some people, but economically, it's a very simple proposition. If you provide bold, material, structural change for people to make their lives easier, they remember it and they like you and they want to vote for you. It's not very complicated. FDR understood it, but the Democratic Party, maybe they understand it, but like you said, this neoliberal system, United Corporations of America, it's almost like, what did Bernie say? They'd rather go down on the Titanic in first class. And Biden, there were things he could have done. I don't want to hear about the 50-50 Senate. There was nothing stopping him from disregarding the parliamentarian and right out of the gate.
Stacking the Supreme Court.
Yeah. There was nothing stopping him from making good on the $15 minimum wage. Nobody's stopping him from taking executive action on healthcare. It might not be Medicare for all, but to expand healthcare. He did not even try to put a public option in any of these reconciliation packages. Again, could have disregarded the parliamentarian. And again, he controls the federal government. He could have pulled subsidies from the oil companies if they wouldn't lower prices. And you know what people love equally to policy that helps them? A fighter.
Yep. Yeah,
So-
I want to go back to woke for a minute though, because I think this is I'm going to repeat this everywhere I go because it's just super important. Woke is a street term. It's a term of people that literally understood the systems against them, that they weren't sitting there playing, glad handing people and faking like everything was okay. It was people that understood and had to kind of keep it code between them. Okay. Being woke was not just some idpol, this bullshit weaponized identity politics that Democrats engage in. And so you've got a difference between weaponized identity politics, which is class dissolution 101. How can you destroy the working class in one fell swoop? Go ahead and use weaponized identity politics. The problem is that without an intersectional movement, and that means not just taking into consideration what poor white people want and what other white, but having to understand that the full scope of the working class has got some things to clean up, that has some history to fix, and not just like ideological, bullshit. I mean, like real legitimate harm that has come. So what we have done is by allowing the GOP and once again allowing the Democrats to claim the word progressive and allowing the GOP to claim that the Democrats are woke. This is literally like bastardizing an important word that has nothing to do with anything. So now everybody's anti-woke, but at the expense of what? It's got nothing. I hate the Democrats. The identity politics they use are so pathetic. It was so transparent when they propped up Kamala. It was so transparent when they propped up Buttigieg. It was so transparent when they went through these things, and everybody sees it. The difference is that 3/4 of America sees it and says, fuck that. Okay. That is identity politics. That is the tokenization and the weaponization of real struggle. Pete Buttigieg has never struggled a day in his fucking life. Okay. Nancy Pelosi never struggled a day in her life. Most of these individuals that they're trying to claim that are so wounded, have these great stories they can tell, are not meaningful or real people. They are fucking straw men up there. And so when you look at identity politics, I despise it. And if you want to talk about killing identity politics, I'm right there with the pitchfork and torch in hand. But if you want to talk about the term woke, being aware, this CRT thing is nothing more than reading Howard Zinn, if you want to be honest, learning real history. These are the things, the Don't Say Gay bill. This is what they're calling woke by standing up for gay and lesbians and the entire community. Because they get the ickies, they suddenly want to pass bills to block the ickies. That, to me, is the real weaponized identity politics coming from the Sig Heil right. But the Democrats are terrible. They're abysmal. And the Kenty cloth moments, all these ridiculously worthless and pathetic spectacles that they do, make everybody roll their eyes and go, you guys suck to high heaven. And I got to give Obama this much credit. Nobody wants to walk on eggshells for accidentally saying the wrong word because somebody grew up for 50 years hearing something a certain way, and they trying to change the way they say things to stay up with the times, and they fuck up, and all of a sudden they're fired and everybody's shitting on them. That is the stuff. That is the weaponization that Democrats have done, and that is what they're paying a heavy price for. And really, the real cause for struggle is failing as a result of the bullshit that they pulled. And you know what?
Well,
it's predictable.
I agree with you. My point is, I don't think they're paying a heavy price specifically on the woke stuff. I think they're paying a heavy price because for 30, 40 years, they've basically provided neoliberal crumbs. I think the woke stuff, yeah, people might not like it. I think it's overstated personally. I think some of this woke stuff is actually good and we should care about offending others or things like that. Sure. I don't think it's necessarily like woke too far. It's just what it should have been in the first place. But I think it's becoming a almost like a deflection and a gaslighting. Like this is why we're turning people away. It's not the lack of economic bold structural change. Yeah. It's not the lack of actually fighting for anything economically. I'm sorry, an Inflation Reduction Act, bipartisan infrastructure deal. You know, a $1,400 check, not exactly kind of like leading the charge economically in terms of changing people's lives. I think if they would have done just the child tax credit one, and he would have fought for that and won permanent extension of that, we'd be having a much different conversation. I got to wrap up because I have to drive to the city now. Steve, tell people one more time. Where do they find
Macro and Cheese, folks? Check me out on my podcast. Releases every Saturday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Again, that is Macro, the letter N, and Cheese. You can find it on our website, realprogressives.org. Also find me at The Rogue Scholar, Monday, Wednesday, Friday on Real Progress in Action YouTube channel. Folks, please, please, please subscribe. And you can also find me here at Status Coup Tuesdays with Jordan and Sundays on Let's Get Ready to Grumble.
Thank you. We'll see you back here, Sunday and again next week. Thank you, everybody, for watching. We'll be back at it tomorrow. Please support us if you can, statuscoup.com/join. We're currently making our midterm election coverage plans, and that we will be on the ground for that. So please support us, statuscoup.com/join. Take care.